As we know, both individuals tested negative for carbon monoxide. City Fire conducted tests and deemed scene safe for deputies to conduct their investigation.
The significance of respecting the family's privacy is clear to everyone who has followed the life of actor Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa. The couple was famously protective of their personal affairs, preferring a life away from the media gaze. Investigations led by the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office conclusively addressed rumors of carbon monoxide poisoning or homicide, stating that no criminal intent was found at the scene. The New Mexico office of the medical investigator later determined something equally astonishing. Betsy passed away on or around February 11th, while Gene died on or around February 18th. Yet their bodies were not discovered until February 26th. This uncanny timeline indicates that Gene spent an entire week in the house with his wife's remains. Immediately, we must ask, what truly unfolded within those walls? Did he try to hide her death? Or perhaps he failed to grasp her condition due to his own health issues? In this discussion, we will explore the final days of a Hollywood legend and the disturbing questions that have arisen. Strange disappearance. Gene Hackman's name is legendary in cinematic circles. With 2 Academy Awards and numerous accolades, he was once hailed as among the finest performers in Hollywood. Despite his prominence, he chose to live quietly, granting few interviews and avoiding major Hollywood gatherings. In the same vein, Betsy Arakawa, a one-time pianist with real promise, also chose a life away from the public eye after marrying Hackman. Her early potential as a classical musician was set aside to enjoy a simpler existence, free of the performative demands of the entertainment world. Seeking seclusion, they settled in Santa Fe, New Mexico, an environment characterized by expansive desert vistas, rugged mountain ranges, and a pervasive sense of calm. Their home was small by celebrity standards, situated on unpaved roads far from any raucous city life. They largely declined social calls, rarely mingled with the local art community, and did not share personal updates on social media. Some might see it as a peaceful retirement, but in retrospect, it also contributed to alarming isolation. On February 11th, Betsy was seen for the final time at a small grocery store close to their residence. Staff there recounted her friendly manner. She smiled, made light conversation, and gave no indication of ill health. Nobody foresaw that this would be her last public appearance. After leaving the store, it appeared she vanished into thin air. Strangely enough, Gene was sighted 2 days later on February 13th, strolling about his property. This was nothing new. At 90 years old, he remained fond of regular walks. But after that day, he too disappeared from view. The neighborhood grew entirely silent around the Hackman household. No lights, no noise, no visitors. While some thought it was merely the couple's usual desire for privacy, others wondered privately if something was amiss. Adding to the concern was Gene's known struggle with mild Alzheimer's, documented by his family. Over the preceding years, he had displayed memory lapses, occasionally mixing up dates or names, yet he seemed capable of daily functions with Betsy's help. With both individuals suddenly out of sight, possibilities sprang to mind. Had Gene become so disoriented that he wandered off? Did Betsy experience a rapid health crisis? As the days passed without any sign of them, these questions grew more urgent. The cause of Betsy's death. The next major clue came when the official autopsy announced Betsy's cause of death as a rare ailment called virus infection. Found primarily in parts of the western United States, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah, this virus is transmitted by contact with or inhalation of particles from rodent waste. Often unsuspecting individuals contract it when cleaning areas prone to rodent droppings. Early symptoms frequently resemble a low-level flu, headache, mild fever, some fatigue. This initial phase can lull sufferers into complacency, but if it advances without medical intervention, the virus can attack the respiratory system, causing fluid buildup in the lungs and severe breathing difficulties. A sobering statistic is that high-risk carries a mortality rate of around 30 to 50%. That means anywhere from 1 in 3 to 1 in 2 infected individuals may not survive. Nonetheless, tests showed that Gene had not contracted the virus, a perplexing discovery considering they lived and interacted closely in the same dwelling. Perhaps Betsy was unknowingly exposed to the virus via a storage area or contaminated bedding. If she initially believed she had nothing more serious than a common cold, she might have simply tried to rest at home. By the time she realized the severity, it could have been too late. An especially pressing issue concerns Jean's Alzheimer's. Individuals in the early to moderate stages of the disease frequently rely on spouses or caregivers for health-related oversight. If Betsy's condition worsened, Jean might not have recognized the seriousness or called for professional assistance. Alzheimer's can erode not only memory but also a person's grasp of emergencies. In extreme confusion, he might have sincerely thought Betsy was just tired or sleeping for an unusually long stretch, never realizing her grave condition. 7 days in silence. From February 13th until the day authorities performed a welfare check on February 26th, their home remained unnervingly still. Not a single neighbor sounded an alarm or inquired about them. Given their notorious discretion, the Hackman's absence did not raise immediate suspicion. It was only after the local police, acting on vague concerns, finally gained entry that the grim sequence of events began to clarify. One unsettling aspect is how the house seemed stuck in a moment. Investigators found minimal signs of normal routine. A glass of water on the kitchen counter, a book lying open on the living room table. The bed where Betsy presumably lay showed no evidence of a struggle. Everything appeared strangely undisturbed, which contributed to an even more disconcerting atmosphere. According to people who study Alzheimer's, it is not uncommon for sufferers to move through their daily tasks in a loop, repeating the same motions despite drastic changes in their environment. In this scenario, Jean may well have awakened each morning, spoken to his wife, unaware she was gone, and carried on as though life was normal. He might have offered her food or water, not registering the reality that she could not respond. This possibility is further supported by the nature of dementia-related hallucinations. Many patients describe seeing or conversing with deceased loved ones as though they are still alive. The line between memory and the present grows blurred, making it plausible Jean believed Betsy was simply in need of rest. A pivotal puzzle piece is whether Jean at any point realized that Betsy had died. People with mild Alzheimer's can experience brief flashes of clarity, especially during traumatic events. If he did comprehend the situation, he might have been frightened and unsure of how to react. The mind under such stress can default to denial, particularly in the cognitively vulnerable. This would help explain why no calls were placed, no urgent attempts to contact relatives were made, and nobody in the immediate community was alerted. Adding even more complexity, the police discovered 3 dogs within the home. 2 were still alive but appeared subdued, which some interpret as a sign of extended stress. The 3rd dog was found locked in a closet, deceased. This bizarre detail prompted multiple theories. Perhaps Jean, in a disoriented state, locked the dog away and forgot about it. Or perhaps the dog hid from something terrifying, a phenomenon observed in frightened animals. The discovery of the dog in such a confined space, particularly if it starved or suffocated, underscores the chaotic nature of whatever was happening inside. Neighbors who were subsequently questioned described hearing nothing unusual during this period. This is not shocking, given the layout of the neighborhood, where homes stand spaced apart and daily contact is rare. These circumstances rendered Jean and Betsy effectively invisible until outside intervention became unavoidable. Hackman's last hours. Jean's body was found on February 18th, lying just inside the front entrance, a place where his walking stick rested close by. Disturbingly, authorities only learned of this on February 26th, meaning his remains lay there for 8 days, undiscovered. A delivery driver happened upon him, at last prompting a police response. The posture in which he was found suggests he may have tried to open the door and go outside. It is possible a sudden weakness, a dizzy spell, or disorientation overcame him at the threshold, leading to his collapse. An individual in advanced age, burdened by Alzheimer's, might lose track of time or become panicked if confronted with a distressing reality. Perhaps in a moment of partial lucidity, he perceived that something was horribly wrong. In a final effort, he might have intended to walk out and call for help but never made it. This scenario is both heartbreaking and plausible, especially given the lack of phone records showing any outgoing calls. Police found no indications of forced entry, robbery, or violence. That fact adds another layer of sadness. There was no direct sign of a struggle, no evidence that an outsider intruded. The entire situation points to a medical tragedy overshadowed by isolation, confusion, and ultimately the quiet passing of an elderly couple in a secluded location. Reflection on a legend. Gene Hackman was not merely an actor. He was considered one of the greatest talents Hollywood had ever seen. His portrayals in iconic films earned him not only Oscars, but also the collective admiration of moviegoers worldwide. However, as he edged into retirement, he distanced himself from the public and the industry. Once he retreated, the world seemed to forget about him. This entire episode highlights the precarious balance between fame and anonymity. If an individual willingly recedes from the limelight, how quickly can the public's interest wane? More importantly, Hackman's end mirrors a pervasive societal issue: the loneliness faced by many senior citizens. Scores of elderly individuals spend their final years isolated, either by choice or circumstance. They may have family members scattered across different regions or no close acquaintances to check in. In a culture that often places youth and productivity on a pedestal, older adults risk being marginalized. Hackman's story feels emblematic of that neglect. As soon as he ceased participating in Hollywood events, he fell out of sight and, tragically, remained out of mind until it was too late. Public reaction to the news was one of shock and regret. Former colleagues and fans posted tributes, praising his body of work, describing him as a gentleman and consummate professional. But these accolades arrived after his demise. If even a few individuals had reached out earlier, or if the local community had been more proactive, perhaps the outcome might have been different. We will never know if timely intervention could have saved him. This ordeal compels reflection on our connections to aging loved ones. Is there an elderly neighbor we have not seen lately? A relative who might be alone? One phone call or a quick knock on the door can sometimes prevent a tragedy. New developments, strange clues, possible foul play. Although authorities initially ruled out external causes, some perplexing elements have stirred speculation about hidden motives or potential crimes. Neighbors reported faint noises on the night of February 17th. Various accounts described a dull thud, while others thought they heard a muted argument or shout. The time, around 11 p.m., was typical for a sleeping household. With limited details, the possibility remains that these sounds were innocuous. Yet the mention of them ignited a wave of theories, including break-ins or something more sinister. Investigators reviewed surveillance footage from private security systems in the area, but nothing overtly suspicious surfaced. They also examined phone logs. No calls were initiated from Hackman's residence in the critical window. Meanwhile, the coroner's office discovered an unusual phenomenon of partial mummification, which typically occurs when conditions limit decay processes. Some argue this might suggest the bodies were deceased longer than believed, or that certain environmental factors slowed decomposition. Police maintain that no conclusive evidence of tampering has been found, though investigations remain open. Additionally, the presence of slight abrasions beneath Gene's fingernails caused speculation. Forensic experts suggested it could simply be the result of him falling and scraping against furniture or flooring, but others wonder if it indicates a more dramatic struggle. Tissue samples were sent to labs to screen for poisons or unusual substances. If Hackman was forcibly poisoned, it would represent a vastly different explanation. As of the most recent updates, the results have not confirmed any toxins. Nonetheless, these unanswered questions have led some to believe that the entire tragedy might be more complicated than a straightforward medical crisis. There is also interest in Hackman's financial situation. He owned properties valued in the millions, and questions arose regarding any modifications to his will or estate. Were there beneficiaries with a potential motive? The authorities have not publicly named any suspects or persons of interest, though an ongoing review of banking records continues. For the moment, the leading theory still focuses on a natural progression of events: Betsy's sudden death due to a viral infection, followed by Gene's disoriented response and ultimate collapse. But speculation lingers, fueled by the press and online rumor mills. A closer look at Alzheimer's provides insight into the extraordinary events surrounding Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa. This disease compromises short-term memory, disrupts one's sense of time and place, and makes everyday tasks difficult. Early-stage sufferers may seem fine despite hidden struggles, and often conceal their symptoms out of shame or fear. Emotionally, the illness can be crushing, which might explain why Gene, if he ever realized Betsy had died, could have been too overwhelmed to respond properly. Disturbing real-life examples exist of people with moderate dementia cohabiting with deceased loved ones for days, oblivious to the loss. The deterioration in cognition makes such scenarios possible, though heartbreaking. If Gene's confusion was advanced enough to undermine his judgment, the events in that house illustrate how vulnerable older adults become without help. Brief moments of clarity mixed with hazy confusion could have deepened his despair, causing him to retreat from reality. The dogs in their role. The dog's presence adds another dimension to this tragedy. Two were found alive but seemed fearful, while one lay dead in a closet. Investigators believe the dog in the closet may have succumbed to hunger or thirst. Gene might have locked it there while confused and then simply forgotten, or the dog might have fled there to escape a distressing situation, only to be trapped. The surviving animals offered no obvious clues. Their subdued demeanor implies prolonged stress. Experts say dogs often sense illness or emotional turmoil. Some stay close to ailing owners, others hide. In this case, the dogs cannot reveal whether Gene tried to care for Betsy, spoke to her as if she were alive, or recognized she was gone. They stand as silent observers of those final days. The isolation experienced by Gene and Betsy was striking. Yes, they deliberately withdrew from public life, but one wonders if solitude also masked potential danger. Their story highlights the wider problem of loneliness among seniors, especially those who live far from relatives or choose not to interact with society. Digital connectivity sometimes leads people to ignore actual human presence. Real warnings can go unnoticed when nobody pays attention to subtle changes. Fame does not shield public figures from this predicament. Gene's retirement removed him from Hollywood circles. Though fans worldwide once cherished him, he apparently drifted into anonymity. This gap between his shining past and quiet end underscores a societal obligation, ensuring that older adults remain visible and supported. His tragic finale calls us to be more vigilant toward our aging population, famous or otherwise. Unfolding investigation officials maintain that the case remains under investigation. They continue to evaluate forensic data, neighborhood reports, and any available surveillance. The simplest, most sorrowful explanation points to a lethal virus claiming Betsy's life, followed by Gene, hampered by Alzheimer's, failing to summon aid. 7 days later, he too passed away, possibly from confusion, dehydration, or heartbreak. Odd details like one dog's death or mentions of odd sounds might be easily explained or might lead to unexpected twists. Even after a final report is released, speculation will likely persist. Modern media often amplifies conspiracies, and some wonder if finances or hidden motives play a role. Others accept it as a grim example of how fleeting human ties can be. Meanwhile, admirers of Gene's cinematic achievements seek a way to commemorate his artistry without sidestepping the tragic nature of his last days. The Forgotten Star, remembered too late. When word of Gene's death broke, tributes poured in, referencing his storied roles, moral lawmen, ruthless villains, and beyond. Critics revisited the impact of his performances on film history. Yet these heartfelt responses arrived after both he and Betsy had passed, much too late to change anything. This underscores a common truth. Public adoration does not stave off loneliness. Gene's demise should remind us that a person's legacy includes the life they are still living, not just the accomplishments they've compiled. Celebrity and achievement do not guarantee a support system at the end. As fans, we can reflect on how even beloved figures need a listening ear. Hackman's final chapter serves as a wake-up call to take proactive steps, rather than waiting for tragic news to surface. Authorities expect to release more findings soon. Autopsy and toxicology analyses might confirm or reject ideas of foul play. No public statements about suspicious financial dealings have emerged, though investigators continue exploring every angle. Should any incriminating discoveries be made, the narrative would shift dramatically. Until then, the public must rely on partial facts and best guesses. Some observers believe it was a straightforward, if deeply sad, series of events. Others suspect that certain unexplained details hint at something darker. In reality, only those who were there could truly know, and one of them was already battling cognitive decline. The fragments uncovered by police might never coalesce into a complete picture. Gene Hackman's cinematic legacy ensures he will remain a revered figure for generations. Still, the real-world finality in his Santa Fe home, shared with Betsy's remains, suggests a tragedy that might have been circumvented. Their ordeal highlights the fragility of human connections, especially in old age, and how, left unchecked, silence can persist for days or weeks without external intervention. Society could learn from this in order to protect vulnerable seniors. Though an official conclusion may arrive, no findings can erase the sorrow. Ultimately, we should recall Gene and Betsy for their enduring bond and achievements despite the bleak conclusion. May their story push us to be more alert. If you follow mysteries and want further developments, keep your notifications on. The hope is that by examining what happened, we might improve how we care for those around us. Investigators have scrutinized the state of the bodies. Certain indications of partial mummification, particularly affecting facial tissue and hands, suggest that factors like low humidity and consistent warmth might have delayed the normal process of decay. New Mexico's arid air can promote tissue dehydration, creating a mummy-like appearance. Although it is unusual within just a week, the region's environment could distort typical forensic conclusions. Another point of debate is the precise timeline. If Betsy's death date is an approximation, the period Gene lived beside her may differ from the 7-day estimate. Some forensic experts think it could have been shorter or longer, contingent on temperature shifts and other household conditions. Regardless, enough time elapsed for her body to decompose before Gene's passing, apparently unnoticed or misconstrued by him. These concerns underscore the complexities of analyzing a scene where no outside observer tracked events, particularly under potentially confusing circumstances. At its core, this chilling episode underscores how easily older adults can vanish from communal view. One sees the interplay of a fatal virus, dementia, and a self-imposed retreat from public life, culminating in heartbreak. The partial facts known so far may never fully capture what Gene perceived or tried to do in his final days. Ultimately, their story reminds us how critical it is to watch out for seniors and step in whenever there are signs they might be in peril.